Larry Porter,
Here.
Jack Looney,
Here.
Garland Land,
Here.
Joe Zach,
Here.
Mark McDonald,
Here.
David McDowell,
Here.
Bridget McCandless,
Here.
Okay, that's everybody. Do we have minutes to approve, Christina, or are we waiting on that?
No, remember we took everything off the agenda
Yeah.
until next time, except for a few things on there. So
I thought we did, but I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Okay, then
thank you.
we can go ahead and get into the presentation. However, in the interest of time, has everybody on the board studied the resiliency and cash balance policy that they received? Has everybody studied that or read it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Jozak?
Yes.
Garland?
Yes.
Mark McDonald?
Yes.
Is there any reason that we have to go through the whole presentation, or can we just highlight it and go to questions or discussion on it? Would that be a benefit or not?
I'm okay with that.
Is that all right with you?
I've got several questions, so whenever you want to do the questions is fine with me.
Who's presenting it? Who's making the presentation?
So Mr. Porter, this is Adam Norris. We have Chris Lover with PFM. He's back from, you recall he did the presentation for IPL's policy, so he's back to give these two presentations.
Okay, is this all right with everybody else? Chris, would you mind just highlighting it, and we'll go to questions and discussion? Is that all right with you, or do you want to make the whole presentation?
I think if we could streamline the process, that'll be fine. If you don't mind, I'll give an overview since it's been a while since I saw you folks with the IPL cash balance study, and I can share content for a minute. I think I can share content.
That'll be fine.
I was going to start off with the water one. And can folks see my screen? Because I lose visibility.
Yeah, I got
okay.
it.
So this is the third, and we'll present the water department and the WPC department today. And I think if you recall back in the fall, I was in the conference room or the boardroom there presenting IPL's resiliency and cash balance study. And I think that the tale of this is that it follows the same framework. So, you know, it's nice that there's a lot of consistency between the three departments. There's a lot of consistency between the risk bins that we used, and where they primarily differ is under the expense risk. So for IPL, we looked a lot at market conditions for natural gas prices, market conditions for electricity prices, and here are the biggest expense risks for these two departments are primarily, you know, the operating expenses, broadly binned in chemicals and power and production, but it's usually not as volatile as you see with the exposure that an electric utility might have. I think that the end result was that the water department looks very similar to IPL in terms of kind of the cash balances they have, the amount that's considered unavailable. And when you get to their target on this page here, we basically say their target should be about $15.3 million. And currently they are about $11 million above target. When you get to the water pollution control department, they look a little bit different. although the report and this presentation follows the same framework, their cash on hand is much lower, and that's due to the fact that they have a debt service reserve fund that's fairly large. Both these departments also have a lot of capital and capital projects that have been approved in previous years but haven't been executed. So we considered those projects to still be a kind of a use of cash and makes those overall cash levels unavailable. So I guess the summary is that you still have some cushion in the water department, about $11 million over the target, and then for the water pollution control department, you're short of the target by about $7 million. So that's really kind of the overall summary.
Okay. I'll just go down the roll and for questions or comments. Bridget, you had some questions you want to ask or comments?
So my questions on the water pollution control with our lower than cash reserves on hand. You made a couple of recommendations on conservation efforts, and you chose more conservative projections based on COVID and economic uncertainty. Do you see those kinds of risks actually building over time, or you think that as the economy settles in the next year, you anticipate that those risks will reduce?
I think when you look at the risk levels we selected, and under the bottom of several of those slides, they say, let's go to the higher reserve level, let's be more conservative, and primarily due to the uncertainty of COVID. And what I think is that as this year shakes out, whether it's the vaccine, whether it's the stimulus, it's whether people get back to work and things materialize as we expect, I would think that as the budget's being put together, I think we might be able to migrate back towards that middle row on those charts. So I think that you could almost grow into this level for the water pollution control.
And on your capital reserve that you have set aside for the renewal and replacement, you chose moderate there because there's a number of these that have not yet been executed but are still on the plate. And do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. When you look at both of these departments, to include water pollution control, there's a significant amount of capital projects approved by the PUAB and by the City Council that have yet to be executed. And that could be a contracting issue, it could be a permitting issue, but there is a significant amount of CIP projects that have been approved over the past few years that have not been completed.
And those would be sewer replacements for really outdated sewer lines and things that were required in part by EPA standards. Is that correct?
From the project list we've seen, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
You have questions or statement?
No, sir. I was very pleased with the reports once I got them.
Okay, thank you. Garland, do you have something, please?
No comments.
Jack?
No comment.
Mark?
Yes, I have several. And I think it's well known that I was a big fan of the previous work that PFM did for IPL. I'm a little concerned about these two different studies, and I'll tell you right front, I will not vote to endorse them because of some of the things that need to take place, and we need to, in my opinion, need to go back to the drawing board. I guess my first question is, who established the risk level, whether it's less conservative or moderate conservative or more conservative? Was that someone in your firm, sir?
for example, on this slide, yes, with these types of studies, we generally talk with staff. This would be staff of the utility and staff of the city. And then generally we compute the cash balance levels at cash to address. And we argue the case that this is the level it should be. And in this case, you talk about COVID and the idea of sales decreasing, economic recession. How long will that take to move through the economy? We felt that was PFM feels that's a prudent level. And as I mentioned, maybe as the year goes on, maybe next year you would slide this back towards the moderate level, but we feel it's kind of hard to argue not being more conservative in this sense. Where we are.
What concerned me about this? Is based on the slides, we're showing WPC is holding in a much more risky situation than the water department. And I don't understand that. Let me give you an example. One of the risks is promotes customers not using your product. We're talking WPC. We're talking about conservation measures with the sewer. Maybe one side or the other, maybe Lisa could answer that. And efficient appliances? And maybe I'm just stupid on this. I can't understand how WPC would have more efficient appliances for its end users. Overall demand for the product given customer behavior, weather, local economic conditions, and population growth. It looks to me like both of these reports were pretty much just boilerplate work. And that concerns me. I did not get that same feeling when we had the IPL study. And I thought it was very appropriate. The other thing that I have concern about is you made a comment about the PUAB approving all these capital projects. I'm not aware of the PUAB on a lot of the capital projects that have been on there for a number of years, approving or not approving. That's why I'm so excited that tomorrow, this is for the PUAB folks, that one of the agenda items that Adam, thank you, Adam, by the way, asked that the Finance and Audit Committee would ask the management analysts to look at the capital budget requests for all three of our utilities. I think there's some things on there that we may be able to whittle down or to get them to reduce for. And I'm concerned. And the available cash, I think that would give us a completely different story about whether WPC is actually in a negative position or not. And I also think that continuing to write on just about every one of these risks, COVID. We've been living in a COVID environment pretty close to a year now. And I think we have a pretty good handle on how we would handle COVID. I know that I'm more concerned about billing. I'm more concerned about meter readers going out and reading a meter and getting the billing system right. That, for me, is a bigger concern for the cash balance than COVID at this time. See, what else did... on each one of these, I went through and, just looked at what risks were necessary for WPC and for the water. And I see their risk level being far less than what we were experiencing with IPL and what we experienced with IPL just the last couple of days. So let's see, that was on WPC. On the water side.
Did you want to address WPC first? Would that be useful?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I really don't know what is more useful. It's just disconcerting when I see things that are in the same report just multiple times. I don't see that their risk level is the same for WPC and water.
So in general, compared to an electric utility, water and sewer utilities across the U.S., if you want to look at a peer comparison, basically have more cash. That's just the way water and sewer is as an enterprise versus an electric utility. So that's one thing that's unique. I would say when you look at WPC, and this is their cash balance slide, their cash, they have a lot of it tied up compared to the other, to the water department. For example, this debt service reserve fund, over $7.5 million, nearly double what water is, and you can't get to that type of dollar. Okay, that's legally restricted, so you can't access that. So that lowers it significantly compared to water. And then it has, I think, a similar amount of bond construction and CIP projects that you're going to have to use some of this cash for. So I think that's something that's a little bit of a nuance there, but it does drive that balance down. In terms of you mentioned appliances. For the water department, you have things such as low flow shower heads.
No. I'm talking about WPC.
Okay, so you also have low flow toilets. Things that a few years ago it would take several gallons to flush, now you can do it for less than a gallon. So that's one example. I think weather applies paradoxically differently. With the water department, if you have a rainy type summer, there's less water use, whereas with water pollution control, on a rainy summer, you have more usage just because you have intrusion into your pipes, and you then have to treat that product in your treatment plant. So maybe we didn't explain it correctly, but there are weather influences on both, but they tend to move in opposite directions in water versus WPC.
I don't see that as a risk. Maybe I'm just being obstinate. I'm not trying to be. But I don't see that as a risk. The more use you have, I see that as more revenue. And I do understand marginally you're going to have more expenses, but the more you use it should be, the better it is. And if you would go through and look at the risk level that you have on it, WPC is primarily all the most conservative. I applaud what Dan Montgomery and his group must have given you as input for water. I thought they did a very reasonable job with theirs. One thing I have concern about, and let's move to water. Can you do that?
Yeah, I have a question on water pollution first, Mark, if that's all right.
Yes, sir.
Chris, my concern is the revenue coming into water pollution control. I have a hard time, and I guess that's because of my ignorance, figuring out how we calculate the usage and why we charge so much. I know of customers that aren't even on sewer that for the last 10 years have been paying $138 a month. And now they finally corrected it and told them they didn't have to pay that anymore. And in the same respect, the usage at some places, if I'm out here in my yard and I water my yard every day in the summer, and I maybe flush my stool 3 or 4 times and do the dishes once or twice, my water bill is going to be real high. And we're calculating the sewer usage on my water usage. Is that not right?
Can I hop in here?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Lisa. So to your point about watering and things like that driving the bill high, that is one of the primary reasons that sewer utilities as a whole bill on a winter quarter or a winter average instead of using actual demand. Because you're exactly right. If we used actual demand, the majority of customers would be much higher in those summer months because of irrigation, but we don't charge that way. We charge based on the average of your winter months usage. So those summer months, you're still paying based on your usage in the winter when you're not watering and things like that.
Okay, but what is the calculation? How do you, if I use 3,000 cubic foot of water, what percentage of that goes to sewage or water pollution?
We still bill a volume amount based on 100 cubic feet, just like water. But ours does, every year in July, we reset the average. So we still look at actuals, what went through the water meter, and use that to bill, but we look at the actuals from the winter months and then set that average per resident every single year.
All right, how much is it, 100 cubic foot?
Hop online real quick.
7.48 times.
You were wanting a dollar amount though, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Anyway, I knew that. You made me remember that.
All those water numbers that we all have stuck in our head.
We worked on the good side of water. You're working on the bad.
Definitely the better smelling side.
Not sometimes down at the plant.
That's true. I'm looking on our website. Hold on. Sewer rates. So we have a base charge every month. We have an environmental compliance fee, and then we have our volume charge. And looks like the volume charge is for currently in effect, and since we have no more rate increases in the future, our volume charge is $4.53.
$4.53?
Yes, sir.
100 cubic foot?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have. Thank you, Lisa.
No problem.
Dan. Mark, you want to go on to water?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Go
Chris,
ahead.
I just saw your name come up. Lisa, I'll call out your name rather than not knowing what your name was. I'm sorry. With the water, I have the same concern about the CIP projects. I don't know that the POB actually has approved very many at all. The next thing I had was this, the significant regulatory and headline risk. Lead and copper rule, I kind of understand that. I kind of understand the discharge rules, but for the life of me, I can't understand why we would be holding money back or holding additional reserves or having anything to do with Flint, Michigan headlines. Unless Dan Montgomery knows something that nobody else knows, Dan, would we do anything like what Flint, Michigan did?
No, I think that he was just using it, the headlines, that there was just things out there that could come up. But the reality of what the real dollar amount figures were for the how we handle the discharge of the sludge to the Missouri River and lead and copper rules. Those are the big ones out there that we've set aside money to address those needs. And those are really coming down the path really quick now. So that's why those are out there.
Well, and I just wanted to let Chris know that's disappointing that we put that kind of stuff into your report as a rationale for reserves. The loss of wholesale customers. I don't see that we have those kind of risks. So those are the kind of things that concern me, is that we have put in, I don't know if we put in good thought with determining what the level of risk, the most conservative versus no issue. Do we use that based on past experience? Because I think water has been pretty stable since we bought the water department.
I think for loss of a large customer, and this slide should be up right now, these are your surrounding area communities such as Lee Summit and Blue Springs. And, you know, there's a few things that go on here. First of all, the idea of is there a change in that revenue stream, you know, due to, of course, economic conditions that cause you not to be able to cover this fee. That's one thing. The second part is that a lot of these supported communities have water agreements with other utilities, and those agreements have minimum takes. So in terms of independence, you're second or third in line of who that utility is turning to for water. So as these conservation efforts happen, if they don't need a lot of water, they're going to that first water source primarily, and then you get the overage, and sometimes that might not be as high as expected or budgeted. So that's why this slide here says on the bottom, it can represent conservation efforts that are going on in the community. Additionally,
did you make that determination? Or was it an outside source that told you it needs to be more conservative?
No, this was our assessment. If you go to the next slide, this loss of a large commercial customer, we basically said, don't do anything here because it's basically addressed in the other two areas. This would be just a bit redundant.
Let me interject something here or ask a question. Mark, please.
Yes.
Dan, am I wrong, or correct me if I am? The only two cities that I recall are Blue Springs and Lee Summit that get from another source their water. Is that right?
Actually, there's several of them, Larry, because the Tri-County Water Authority out east. So some, like Blue Springs has Kansas City and Tri-County that they can buy from. And Chris is right that some of those minimums that they have to take with these newer contracts in order to get involved in them, they have to take that water first. Now, granted, they prefer our water because of the cost of the water and the quality of the water. So I'm just bragging here, but the reality is that they prefer to do that. But we have just a few that are sole source, like Sugar Creek, Oak Grove, like Green Valley can go to multiple places, Blue Springs, Lee Summit. So Raytown can go to multiple places. So to answer your question, Larry, there's multiple sources for them to go out and take it. Even if they prefer to take it, contractually, they're going to have to buy that water from them. And like you say, as Chris was saying, was with these conservation measures, these are not choices that people make to be conservative with their water, because water in the Midwest is pretty inexpensive. However, you cannot go out and buy a dishwasher now, or used to do a load of laundry, 50 gallons. It's a gallon now. So regardless of what we do or say, we're not pushing conservation, but the fact of the matter is that is what's going on in the world today.
Okay, yeah, Dan, you're right. I just didn't realize that Green Valley and them had other sources. I thought we were the only one at one time, and I think we were at one time. But I guess
I think in a day that as they've added them, these newer ventures where they have to go out and spend extra money or spend more money to get another source of water, it's more expensive, so they're making sure that they get paid and they're getting their return to pay for those, any investment that they have. So we did not steer Chris in any direction on this. This was a selection he made based on the knowledge that he had been given to him. So,
okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure my head was right, but I guess it wasn't. Anyway. Well,
things have changed in the past couple of years, so Larry,
a whole bunch of things have changed in my lifetime. Go ahead, Mark. You have anything else?
Under the cash, Chris, is the money that the water department is loaning to the city or to Parks and Rec or somebody, how is that accounted for in your analysis? Is that as invested funds?
I believe it is, but I'd probably ask if Brian Kidney's on to confirm where that sits.
Is Brian on?
I will state that they are making the payments. So,
well, regardless, that's money that should be in your cash reserves.
I guess no answer is a good answer.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about capital. Chris, did you have the opportunity to speak with Dan about what their capital budget plan is for the future? I see that and I don't have your presentation in front of me. I just have the slide. But I think Dan's plan is to use substantially more capital than what you're utilizing for capital reserves. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yes, I would say Chris was going with what we had already requested. And, you know, we made the presentation just recently to the PUAB about the need to work on our infrastructure. And we're only replacing a quarter of what we should be replacing on the main replacements. So he can only go with what we had already had logged in. He couldn't presume or assume that we're going to jump to a 1% replacement level. So, you know, so that's new to him as far as that goes. Does that help answer that, Chris?
Yeah.
You?
That answers it for me, because my concern is we need to make sure that this cash and resiliency matches up with what we're going to be doing. And I just wanted to make sure that notification was being done.
Yes, I think we made it aware of what's going on, but it was a little difficult for him to add that without us, you know, it's just arbitrarily adding a bunch of money. Now, granted, what we want to do is spend that money, the excess money we have, on getting this jump started and moving forward to address some immediate needs. I don't know if you were on here earlier when I was talking to Larry ahead of the meeting, but, you know, just in the last week, we had 24 main breaks and 200 calls for frozen water service, you know, 50 frozen meters. And we worked 8 main breaks on Friday. So, I mean, on last Saturday alone. So there's this cold weather has just reinforced what we said all along, that the infrastructure needs to be replaced. And that's where we're going to want to spend the money. And that's what we're addressing with the PUAB, bringing forward. And that's what the goal would be, is to get on that 1% a year plan to get these mains replaced.
Well, you're speaking to the choir. I just want the reports to be accurately reported to, because our advisement is to the city council and looking for the best interest for our ratepayers. But that's all I've got, Larry. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Chris, for your patience.
So,
Thank you, Mark.
This is Garland.
Hi, Garland.
So I think we're all supportive of, we realize now that we have some excess reserves and in the water company. And we also, I think we're supportive of wanting to move forward in replacing some of those old water lines and so forth. What is it that we can do as a PUAB in being supportive? Is there some action that we can be taking, or is there some timing? Or, you know, I don't know what it is that we can be doing at this point in time, or at some point in time in the future.
You want to answer that, Dan?
Well, obviously, we've made our request, and we can move forward to formalize that if, and you're exactly spot on with where we're wanting to go with this. So I can't argue with anything that anybody said today any more than what you're saying. You're preaching to the choir here. So I can talk to Mr. Norris about what we need to do to move this forward, but we're all on the same book and page here.
I guess that, you know, if you need something from us to go to the city council or in your budget request or whatever, I think we want to be supportive of you. But we just don't know what, you know, how to do that.
Adam, are you still there?
I'm here. I was trying to remember when this was presented to the board. I don't recall if any formal action was taken on it at the time. If I remember right, it was the suggestion was to wait for this document, this policy to be presented, and then the board would take, you know, formal action endorsing that plan.
I think that's correct.
So I think what would be, if you're asking what's helpful for us to move forward with that, is in advance, it would be for the board to formally endorse that and recommend that program.
Mr. Norris, I think I shared with you, I think it's the amount of money that's out there would get us 2.5 years into a main replacement program without having to go out and ask for additional funding. Yeah, so it would provide a good seed money for that program to get started. Absolutely.
I have just a statement. We put this off for that reason, Adam, is we're going to give it to the city council. And I have a few little reservations about some of the stuff, especially in the water pollution control. I'm not sure of all that, but I think it's something that can be worked around. To answer your question, Garland, in my opinion, is approving this resiliency plan, and the next thing on our agenda is an action item. Is that not right to cover this, Adam?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Mark. My questions in no way, shape, or form challenge the concept of the resiliency and cash balance program. Just like with IPI, I was totally in favor of it. This one is, I don't think, giving an accurate depiction of what is our risk and what is actually out there. We got, in my opinion, before this can be approved, the capital project in progress, I think we need to allow the Finance and Audit Committee to make a ruling on whether they're going to allow a study to be done, because that's a big portion of money that could be going towards bringing WPC up to a point where they're not in a negative position. And it also might make more money available to the water department. And it also might give us an opportunity to look at the debt that's coming up due, that's callable, that Adam made available to us today to review. I think all those things are still up in the air, and I think it's premature to approve this plan until some of these issues are dealt with, because the issue of determining the levels of risk is substantial to the bottom line. I just want to make that point. I will not be voting in favor of this resiliency plan at this time.
Well, it seems to me that the
Yeah,
controversy.
you want to talk, Garland?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Garland?
Mr. Garland.
Yeah, go ahead.
It seems that if there is controversy, it doesn't seem to be around the water. And it seems to me that we're all supportive of using the excess water reserves for moving forward and supporting the need to replace the water lines. And I would hate to, and I think what we have seen in the past is when the city council sees a large amount of reserves sitting someplace, then they find a reason to use it for other purposes. And I think that we ought to be supporting the water company to use those excess reserves for the need that they have brought to our attention. And so I would see us supporting using those excess reserves for replacing the water lines.
Thank you, Garland. Jack, anybody else have a comment?
Just regarding risks, I agree with the previous comment. This is Jack, I'm sorry. Regarding previous comments about the weight given to COVID, with the medicines we have now, with the nation focused on moving forward, getting businesses back open, I think we're in a different place than we were a year ago. I'm not sure that the severity or the level of them that's given to the rating for COVID should be so. It should be a little better than what it is. And that's my concern.
Okay, Mr. McDowell, you got anything?
No, sir. I'm just sitting here listening.
Bridget, do you have any more?
I wonder if we can separate these two and send forward the report for the water department and allow questions to be answered on the WPC, and then wait to vote on that one for the next meeting.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll second it.
Who seconded it?
McDowell did.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is Christina.
Hi, Christina.
I just wanted to mention that I believe there was a separate motion for the IPL policy. I believe it was back in the November meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So that was, I believe, done separately in a different motion, just so everybody knows. There was a question earlier about that.
So this would be covered under past practices?
No, there was a question earlier asked if there was actually a motion made about the IP policy, moving it forward to council. There was a motion made.
Okay.
Separately for IP.
Did it pass?
I believe it did, yes.
Okay. My concern on the thing is, I was talking to Dan, as he mentioned earlier, COVID had nothing to do with what's happened in the last month with Dan and the water department as far as main breaks and service lines, meters being frozen and broken. So you're using a lot of money up there immediately. So I want him to get as many of these mains replaced as soon as possible. I think your motion is good, and I would vote yes on that motion. I would still like to take a deeper look into. I appreciate all of Lisa's efforts and water pollution control, but I still think we need to look at some stuff there. And so for that reason, I'll vote yes on this motion. Anybody else got discussion on it? Jozak, you got anything?
No, nothing at this time.
Well, I guess we can call the roll on this motion, Christina.
Okay, Larry Porter,
Yes.
Jack Looney,
Reluctant, no.
Garland Land,
Yes.
Jozak,
Yes.
Mark McDonald,
No.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless,
Yes.
Did that pass, Christina? I forgot to count on my fingers.
there was 5 yes and 2 no.
Okay, motion passed. Now, Adam?
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Porter?
Just a moment, Bridget.
Okay.
Adam,
Yes, sir.
is there any problem doing this?
Separating the two policies out?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, we were,
we did
planning
that
on-
with Power and Light, right?
beg your pardon?
We did that with the Power and Light.
The Power and Light, we brought that one forward on its own, so we can bring water forward on its own as well. I think it would be helpful to know the specific areas of concern with WPC in the policy. Since we have our representatives from PFM here and we have their attention, it might be helpful to hear some of that feedback from the board if we're delaying that one.
Okay, I think you're right. Okay, go ahead, Bridget.
I had a separate question just before PFM leaves, so I will hold my question.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Yes, sir.
Questions on water pollution control. I'm in favor. I appreciate all that's being done down there, but my concern is for the ratepayers. And I understand we're using, as Lisa told me, the winter months. But there again, I see time and time again where the sewer bill is higher than the water bill. and I don't know how that happens. I think we need to look at, I just don't understand that. I can find examples and bring them forward later on, and I'll show you. I think there's more details need to be checked out in there before we approve going forward with their report. Does anybody else have any questions on that?
Well, as I've looked at my my bill there, Larry, it seems to me that a good portion of that sewer bill is because of the environmental fee that's tacked onto it. It isn't because of the volume bill, it's because of that environmental fee. And I'm not sure how we get around that.
Okay. Lisa, are you still on?
I am.
Is anything in your capital budget covering anything to improve the environmental restrictions and stuff like that?
Okay, so I guess I want to back up a little. To answer your question, yes, our projects all in some way tie to keeping sewage in pipes where it's supposed to be and not spilling on the ground, keeping us out of environmental regulation issues. But as far as the first issue that was raised, sewer being more than water, our rates are higher than water. As a general rule, many entities' sewer rates are higher than water. The most obvious thing there I'd say is water's taking relatively clean water from an underground source and chemically treating it to make it drinkable. We are taking that waste and cleaning it up to almost drinking water standards to put it back in water in the river to be source water for other drinking systems. So we are a more regulated industry, a more expensive process, and all of those things combine to higher rate for sewer than water. The $12 environmental compliance fee that Garland mentioned is the way that the WPC portion of the department pays back the bond debt, that $6 million a year in bond debt that we had because of the consent decree from the EPA. We finished those projects in 2015 and 16 and were released from the consent decree formally by the EPA in 2016. But obviously that bond debt carries out 30 years past. So when that debt is paid for, that $12 fee goes away. And it was done that way to keep the ratepayers from paying in perpetuity for projects that were covered in a short window of time, and specifically associated with debt that was forced on us by regulatory agencies. So if you look at our rates, just our volume and base rates compared to other cities, we're low to middle of the pack. It is that $12 fee that does put us high middle of the pack, but we're definitely not the highest in the metro. And we do have comparisons available for your reference. They're usually part of our budget presentation every year. And I'm happy to share those at any time. But yeah, that $12 fee puts us higher, but again, that's how we pay for that debt.
So when that $12 fee expires, the bill will be less, is that correct?
Yes.
By $12 and something.
Yes.
And when,
it's a flat $12 per account per month.
What is your projected time that would happen?
That report, yeah, 30 years from when we started issuing debt. It's in that report that Adam sent out today, but it would be in 42, I think.
I won't be able to
enjoy that $12 going away.
I won't be around for that one.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Any other questions on water pollution control?
Mr. Porter, this is Chris Lover. I did have one comment about that
Okay.
environmental charge. Some utilities explain that better as being a clean rivers charge, just because, as the general manager stated, it keeps the river clean, and you're putting that inherently dirty product back into the river. So it basically is a clean rivers charge, and it is one of the most highly regulated industries around. So compared to water, that's why your fees are higher on water pollution control. And it's something we commonly see with water versus sewer utilities.
Okay, I appreciate that. That answers a lot of my questions. Anybody else got questions on water pollution control?
So
Well, I think it seems to me that Mark was the one who had the questions around WPC. Maybe he's the one who needs to reiterate his questions so that they can be answered later on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I appreciate you acknowledging me. I think I went through them fairly thoroughly, in that I think there's a problem with the capital projects in progress, just like with the water. I also think that the whoever put together the report established that there's a far more risk involved with WPC than the water on each one of those areas, which made no sense to me whatsoever. The capital projects, I know that since I've been on the PUAB board, we approved a rate increase so that we could process the solid waste that comes out of there. At some point, that money, those dollars, should be able to help support any deficiencies WPC may have in revenue dollars. Because at some point when it's paid off, and I think they took it out of reserves to pay for it, those extra dollars that we put into their revenue stream are going to be available to them. So I have some real issues with the report. So basically, I think they need to be reworked to be more realistic with the level of risk. And also, we need to find out what can come off the, I know on IPL, there's several projects that have been on there for years and years, and no one takes them off. Those are dollars that can go towards establishing a fund for following the investment for the water department, or going back to the ratepayers, or most importantly, paying down the debt. And I don't know if any of you guys have looked at the report that Adam sent to us, particularly, and I didn't get to really research water and WPC, but we are paying for debt, continuing to pay for debt, refinancing debt for the plant that doesn't even operate now. So that's the kind of thing I would hope that we can help advise the council to avoid in the future. We have too much debt and it's doing nothing for the city or the ratepayers. That's my concern, folks. I don't want to be tied up in reserves that could be utilized in making our balance sheet in better shape. Hopefully that's enough.
Mr.
Chairman.
Yeah.
This is Garland.
Hi, Garland.
Can I ask Lisa? Lisa, did you have an opportunity to review these recommendations, and do you agree with the recommendations?
Yes, PFM, we met several times to go over these recommendations. One of their notes there in the end is that there is the option post-COVID to make that conscious decision to lower the risk level in some aspects that would no longer be tied to the pandemic. So that's one option that we have. But yeah, we went over the information provided, and just for the board's information, we are in the process of going through every single capital project on our books and getting those cleaned up and finally off the books. There are still some known that we will be just closing out here shortly. So that will, I believe, will improve the position. We're still not going to be at the recommended level when we're done, but we will be much closer. And like I said, a lot of those projects are, and to Mark's point about having voted for the biosolids project, that is a $5 million project that's still on those books as a capital project. We did not take that as a reserve out of reserves to do. That was part of our capital plan that we present to you guys every year. And that one's still obviously active and nearing completion, but still active. So things like that. We consider ourselves basically bonded out, so we don't ever consider taking on new debt because of all the debt that was issued to us as part of the consent decree. or that we issued as part of the consent decree. So everything we pay for, those projects are all paid for from our annual budget and the capital plan. So we have no intent of issuing debt. And when we can call the ones that are callable and we can save money on those interest rates, then we intend to do that and to apply that toward the cash balance.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Mark McDonald. I'd like to applaud Lisa for those comments, because that's all I've been asking for all afternoon. For someone to go through those capital projects that have been sitting there for who knows how long. And I appreciate her honesty in saying there's some things that need to be reviewed. And also the point about whatever that our lime project, Lisa, whether it comes out of your reserves or not, it's still monies that come to WPC that eventually either become reserves or like in your case, we don't have any reserves the last time I looked at your budget. But that's not the point. The point is, I just want the report to accurately reflect what we're doing. And we need to be as aggressive as we can to get rid of the debt. And that's basically it. Thanks a lot, Lisa. That was very helpful.
No problem. And I totally agree. I'm not a fan of debt either. So we're on the same page.
Thanks, Lisa. I applaud you, because I was going to comment. I think it was my first year on the board, we approved your budget project for the solid waste disposal, if I recall right. And it was a budgeted item, and it wasn't out of reserves or anything.
Correct.
Okay, moving on. Do we want to re-vote on the recommendation, or make a motion to go ahead and send water pollution up to the council too, or not? I guess we're not. Okay, move on to the next item on the agenda is an action item.
Mr. Porter.
Yes.
Real quick, this is Adam Norris. If the board is open to this, I believe you recommended approving the water department policy. Did the board still also want to recommend or endorse the main replacement program and applying the identified excess cash towards that program?
This is Bridget. That was intended in my motion, yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Can we move on? Do you want to move on to the action item, everybody?
Mr. Porter, may I ask PFM one question before they're done with their report?
Yeah, he's still here. We got him for a while.
Okay. I know that there's been discussion at the city council level about building a new power plant with the potential price tag of $500 million in new bond issuance. And I want to see if you could give me a rough back of the envelope. What would that be in total dollars once interest rates are repaid? What would be the total cost, including financing, for $500 million in debt?
I probably have to run the numbers on that, just because 500 million is a big number. We'd probably break that out. You could break that out into multiple phases. That's a transaction a client of mine did in Michigan, the same exact price tag. So I could probably just pull that, and send that over to the city and use that as a proxy.
Very good. I'd appreciate that information. Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay, now, Brian, you're requesting a motion here. Are you there, Brian?
I can handle this if you'd like. I think Brian's having some technical challenges.
Hopefully I'm on here now. There we go. And I apologize earlier. I had some technical issues.
You're requesting a motion that we approve the resiliency cash balance policies And we've just approved the water. Did you hear that? Do you understand that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move this forward to put together a water reserve policy, just like we did for the IPL one.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I don't believe so. And again, I apologize about technical issues there.
Anybody else got questions for Brian? Means we got him here. Brian, I have a question.
Okay.
How do we calculate the 9.8 point for each department, and then put in? Is it showed on your report any place that I can't find where we have in lieu of taxes an amount, and then show me the balance after that is taken off the taxes? Do you have anything in there on that?
If you're referring to the actual financial statements,
Yeah.
we do show, I think on the packet, let me look here. Well, these aren't numbered, but it's we do have the November financials in there. And you can calculate, we do show out the utility payment in lieu of taxes as a separate line item.
Yeah, you show it as a separate line item, but what I'm saying is you tax on the net, right? For each department? The taxes on the net?
I'm not sure I understand the in lieu of is calculated on the gross.
I don't want the in lieu of, if you don't have anything in lieu of taxes, do you have anything? What do you tax it on? The net amount of profit or not?
It's based on the gross charges.
All right, the gross charges. Then if you got $13 million in lieu of taxes, is that taken off of that amount?
That is the amount. The 13 million is what we're estimating to be the 9.9% of the total charges for services is that 13 million. And then that is divided by 12, and then well, that's how we come up with that 13
Well, if you
million.
have in lieu of taxes, I thought in lieu of is in place of taxes. Is that right or not?
Yes.
Well, then, if you have $40 million in taxes and I have $13 million in lieu of taxes, then I take the $13 million off of 40 million, right?
I'm not sure I understand the 40 million. I'm not following
That's
that.
just a number I come up with, sort of like you all do. I'm sorry, I'm not. What I'm saying is, if I paid $40 million, if my gross said I owed $40 million in taxes, and I've already paid $13 million in taxes, will that not be taken off of my 40 million?
Yes, if we would use the amount of $130 million as charges for services, the gross amount subject to the in lieu of, and then 13 million then would be the amount of in lieu of taxes. Is that?
Well, okay. I'll talk to you later. All right. Okay. We're done then, I guess. I don't know. Anybody got anything else?
May we ask?
Bridget, you had some questions you want to ask?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Everybody's been watching the craziness in Texas, and so I wanted to just ask Mr. Nail a couple of questions so that I can understand the state of IPL in this current situation. I just wanted to know, of our current generation capacity, how many of those assets were functioning at 100% during this challenging time when people were
concerned about the possibility of blackouts, even though there were very few in Independence.
Yes, we had, out of our 6 combustion turbines, 5 of the 6 were running throughout this period as called on by Southwest Power Pool. Some days it would be for a couple of hours and then back again for more, but, or 12 hours or more, but they ran extensively. In fact, we were bringing in fuel oil as fast as we could to keep those running. The Dogwood plant actually ran less than 2 of our turbines did. Dogwood plant was unable to get natural gas, so they ran only on a limited basis. The Nebraska City 2 unit was just coming out of an outage, so they were limited to about 60% of their what our normal take is from them. Iatan 2, it ran at 100% throughout the whole thing. Now, Onetta, the question came up during the council meeting about Onetta. Onetta, we don't buy energy from them. We only have capacity, but they were also shut down due to the lack of natural gas. So does that answer your question?
That helps very much. Is there a time in the future when you can talk to us about Dogwood and how they're functioning and give us an update on Nebraska City 2? I know that they had flood risk issues in the past. It would just be helpful to have an update on those.
I'd be happy to answer your questions anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
Larry,
Bridget?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Garland.
Hi, Garland.
Could I ask Mr. Nail a question also?
Sure.
If we had had our own power plant, or base unit as some call it, this past week, could we have avoided the blackouts and still been a participant in the SPP?
No, sir. As a participant in Southwest Power Pool, all of us had a share of the outages. Several thousand megawatts had to be dropped, and our pro-rata share of that was 3 megawatts on the first day and 12 megawatts on the second. So we only contributed a very small percentage, but we did play our part. If we had our own power plant, if Blue Valley was still in operation, or a similar plant to replace it, very likely we would have had the same natural gas problems that Dogwood and Onetta faced, and good chance that those would not have been operating.
So I realize that the problems were in terms of freezing up and so forth, but that's really not my question. I guess the question is, would we have been at liberty to take our power plant off of the grid and just sell the power to our own customers and not sell them back to the SPP?
We could self-schedule. However, again, as a member of Southwest Power Pool, if Southwest Power Pool declares a load shedding event, all of us together participate in that. So we still would have had an obligation to drop that load.
Okay. So I mean, that's some of the discussion that's going on in the community right now, that if we had our own power plant, then we wouldn't have had to worry about these type of environmental problems. But I don't think that's not really the answer.
Thank you, Garland. Any comments from anybody else on the
Mr. Chairman?
Manager? Yes.
I just got a couple of things I'd like to share. One is, I don't know, for the analysis for the $500 million power plant, maybe I'm in a twilight zone, but I haven't heard anybody say that somebody's going to be requesting $500 million for a power plant. You know, what the PUAB agreed to back in December, I believe, of 2019 was for us to look at replacement of the CTs that are 50 years old. And in fact, at least one of them didn't operate. And I don't know how long that one hasn't been able to operate. The real issue is we need to find a way to replace that energy for those CTs. And that's the only thing I think the PUAB has looked at or even suggested. I don't know where that $500 million number came from, but I think it needs to be looked at on all of our alternatives. It's on our priority list that we submitted to the city council on determining the generation for the future. Whether IPL wants to get out of SPP, I don't know. It is amazing. I will agree with Garland on one thing. It's amazing how people now know what SPP stands for and what it does. And I can assure you that was not the case until this week. So that's really the only comment. I do want to say a special thanks to Adam for getting us that data on the debt. And it enlightened me tremendously that we're paying debt. We're paying for servicing debt on assets that no longer are in use. That is troubling. But that's all I have. Thanks a lot, folks. Stay warm.
Anybody else got comments? I want to make a comment before everybody gets off on could we wait just a minute? Hold on the reports from the assistant city manager. I was contacted by the city manager and the mayor's office, and they are going to take the Bondurant legal analysis up at the next council meeting, and would request that we talk about it after the council meeting, so it'll be at our next meeting. So everybody's notified. That won't be on our agenda this time. Okay, anybody else got comments? I guess
Jack Looney did.
Who? Jack?
But you actually answered it. It looked like we moved over item D in our agenda and went straight to F. All the comments are good comments and good discussion. But I just didn't want to leave that out. I'm glad you brought us up to date on that.
I should have done it first in the meeting, but I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. And as long as I've got the floor, I had submitted 2 motions for consideration by the board, and I'd like to get those on the upcoming agenda items if possible.
Okay. I thought we had copies of that. Does everybody have a copy of that motion?
No, I don't think it. I submitted it to you for approval. I think that's as far as it went, Larry.
Okay, I'll get it on the next agenda or upcoming agenda, Jack. I'm sorry.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments from board members?
Yeah, this is Garland again. I'm sorry to bring up. I appreciate the fact that we're getting our the dashboard being presented again. As I look at it, even though it's kind of, we had it for a while and then we didn't have it. Now we're seeing it again. But as I look at it again, I have some questions, and I know we have some new members on the PUAB. I think it would be well if at a future meeting somebody would go over the dashboard and explain it, the definitions that are on it, and so that we understand the dashboard that is being presented to us.
Thank you for reminding me, Garland. I have a question for Bridget and Mr. McDowell. Are you both still here?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Did you get a introductory packet when you came on the board of the policies and the Bondurant decision and the different departments that we're covering in a nice folder?
Yes.
You did? Okay. I just want to make sure you had that. And if you'd like, Garland, I'd like to, at a later date, I'll call you on the phone or something and schedule maybe me and you sitting down with Bridget and Ms. McDowell one at a time, so we don't have a committee. We don't have to have a sunshine problem, and go over the dashboard. Is that all right?
Well, I can do my best, but I think we also need to have somebody from the finance department to explain some of it too.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll work on that later. Hopefully within the real near future, we're going to be able to look one another in the eye in the room. Anybody got anything else?
This is Bridget. I just wanted to be sure that we reminded ourselves that we had received a letter of concern from a ratepayer, and that I promised that I would make sure that it got to Mr. Nail regarding difficulty with them being able to get correct addresses and appropriate billing. And so, Mr. Nail, I will make sure that you get a copy of that letter that I received.
Jim, I thought you already took care of that.
That was handled by our customer service department in Dan Montgomery.
Dan, do you want to address that?
Was it Jeff Foster?
Yes.
Yes,
sir.
I sent the package. I think Christina included the package earlier to explain that, but we did make contact and corrected that. It was an issue that we had downstairs in customer service, but we've corrected that. We just haven't been able to get a hold of him or get back with him. So hopefully that's been addressed.
Thank you.
I agree with you. I've tried to get a hold of him 4 times and I finally gave up. He won't return my calls. So
yeah, just the nature of what goes on there. The billing system has a customer number and a number that's based off the address, and they were trying to combine them, and somehow or other they mistakenly did not send the correct mailing address. They were sending it to the residents. So that's all been corrected, and any kind of penalties have been removed from his bill. He should be good to go, but again, we just haven't been able to reach him.
Also, Dan, isn't this something that happened there when we first had the change in the billing?
You know, actually, I think it occurred over when the ransomware thing went down. So yeah, it was hard to follow up and make the corrections. That's why it took so long. But we did respond. I could go back and look. I got the folder in my hand, but we did go back and respond to it, and it should be all taken care of, and it should not be an issue anymore.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, nothing else, anybody? Then
just
we are.
One comment.
All right.
One comment, if you'll indulge me, please.
Yes.
Due to the situation we've had with the terrible cold weather, unprecedented times actually for many in the South, unprecedented in many ways here in this area under, again, unprecedented times due to COVID. I'm just wondering if the board would want to consider a recommendation to consider some sort of billing relief for the bills that'll be in March. There will be many folks that still aren't working and are not going to be able to pay their bills.
Dan, I thought that was already being addressed.
It could be, but not to my knowledge.
Dan?
Yes.
And those bills in March, I don't know, overbilling and everything, had that been addressed?
You know, there actually was no overbilling. It was just because we didn't bill in the month of December.
Right,
so,
but I'm saying
all those bills
were made so that they can catch up.
Yeah, that's all been taken care of. I think what he's asking about is to, which is what we did with the 1011 Jim Nail can address that, but we've made those refunds of that amount of money that was asked there. I don't know if that answers the question though.
The bill credit that was approved, that's been applied to all the accounts. As far as any bills that are going to be incurred as a result of this past week, we are going to look at that very carefully and work with Southwest Power Pool and make sure we know exactly what the balance sheet is before we do anything to resolve those bills. We're not going to do a preemptive strike of anything. Okay,
Jim, thank you. Does that cover Jack?
Yes, as long as somebody's considering it and, you know, we move in a manner that's appropriate. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Any more? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Good night and good rest.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Larry.
Thank you.